Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Multiple bosses never ends well, guys. Anyway, our OP starts with a week of in-house vacation. What a benefit. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. You have a week of training left. I just started a new job at a mental health counseling center as a therapist. I've been in the field for several years and I'm experienced with all the most popular software for doing things like keeping track of therapy notes, billing purposes, and storing electronic medical records. On top of that, I only need minimal clinical supervision due to my experience. All of that means that my new hire training time has only taken about half as long as it normally does, since all I really needed to learn was the workflow of this new clinic. My two bosses are the clinic director, John, and the office manager, Mike. They're the two in charge of the entire clinic, and neither is higher than the other. The John manages all of the therapists and makes sure we're doing what we're supposed to, such as keeping proper records and whatnot. The Mike is in charge of everything else, including the scheduling software we use to manage client appointments. Mike and myself had a conversation Friday that went something like this. Mike: "Wow, you got through the training process really quickly. John neglected to tell me you already knew how to use all of our software." Me: "Yeah, I've been doing this for several years now. Until the next major change, I can run through this stuff with my eyes closed." Mike: "John didn't tell me that he was hiring an experienced counselor this time. I should be able to put you on the scheduler for next week if you're cool with that. You technically have one more week of training time." Me: "Sure, I don't mind. No sense in wasting productive time." Fast forward to this morning. I walked into the office a little early so I could check my caseload and prepare everything. My John walks up to me and we have this conversation. John: "I saw Mike put you on the scheduler Friday. I took you off. You still have a week's training left." Me: "I finished the training though. I sent you both the same email." John: "I didn't read that. Besides, it doesn't matter. You still have a week left." Me: "So you want to pay me to sit on my hands for a week because I have a week of training left that I already completed?" John: "Yes, you have a week of training left." Me: "Okay, you're the boss. Let me know if you need anything." After that, he smiled, nodded, and walked away. So for the next week, I intend to browse the internet, watch YouTube videos, maybe read a book, all while being on the clock for it. Edit 1. I've done a few things today. First, I sent a cover my butt type email to both John and Mike that confirms I am to do nothing until the training period is over. Second, I emailed HR asking for any government or company policy regarding training rules. I'll update further as the situation unfolds, so to speak. Update. So after some asking around yesterday and checking my emails this morning, I have a few more answers. The handbook states, paraphrasing here, that training takes as long as it needs to, so the supervisor feels like the employee is competent. State guidelines dictate a minimum of 1 week of training on company policy regardless of experience level or competency shown. So I've crossed the state minimum requirements. As for John and Mike, everyone here is adamant that they have the same level of authority and each can make changes in systems such as the scheduler as a safety precaution in case one of them is gone. However, John has the final say on the clinical side, whereas Mike has the final say on pretty much everything else. Both have been at the facility for at least 5 years. My fellow therapists say that in general they work well together, with only occasional disagreements. But Mike's a rule bender, and John is a rule follower. John specifically responded to my email and said he wasn't ready for me to be done that fast and always goes at least 2 weeks as a personal rule. He says he'll consider making an exception, but finds it unlikely that he'll do so. And our second story. No electricity, no ice. My story takes place in a small town in Louisiana. I worked at a small mom-and-pop grocery/convenience store during my senior year of high school. Including the owner, there were only 9 employees. Most of our customers were regulars, and because it was a small town on the water, we were very lenient with our no shoes, no shirt policy. That year, Hurricane Katrina hit. I'd only been working there for a month or two after school and weekends, and since I lived a town over, I didn't know as many regulars as everyone else. The day before Katrina, I was asked to work a 12-hour shift without breaks, and I did. I understood it was an emergency situation, Plus, I was young and didn't know how to stand up for myself. That night, after getting off, I evacuated with my family. We live very close to New Orleans, and it was necessary to leave. Skip forward 3 days. We come back to inspect the damage and start cleaning up. There was no electricity, and everything smelled rancid. Most people threw out their entire refrigerators. It was disgusting. On the way to my boyfriend's house, I decided to stop by work and see how bad the damage was. The ceiling had caved over the alcohol section, and the dairy, meat, and freezer sections that line 3 ways of the store has melted and flooded onto the floor. It really added to the delightful river flood water smell and alcohol that had been in the heat for days. I was in pajamas as I hadn't planned on stopping anywhere important and had no clean clothes. There was a line wrapping around the block to get in, so out of curiosity I went in. Mistake. They handed me a garbage can and I rolled up my pants and started cleaning. There were only 5 employees and no electricity. The owner was very generous. He was letting customers shop, 1 person at a time, matched up with 1 employee, and we walked with them, writing down their items and calculating costs. The owner accepted cash and even checks. We rounded the price up or down to make life easier, and most people were very understanding. We even opened the sealed freezers, which had managed to stay cold, and gave away any usable meat and dairy products for free. We also cooked hot meals and handed them out to customers waiting outside. After working and sweating and wading through floodwaters for about 8 hours, it was dark. We continued to work with flashlights. I was miserable. Then I got to one of the worst human beings I have ever come across in retail. I'll call her Tuesday. She immediately starts screaming at me because she had to wait in line for 2 hours. I apologized, but didn't show much effort to give a crap, as it was pretty obvious everyone had been waiting around and miserable. She stands over me, watching me write down her items, and every time I do, she would take it out of the cart and pick another brand. I erase and write down the next thing. Since most items were close to $1, they got rounded up. 99 cents became $1. It wasn't much. She complained because it was lazy on our parts and she shouldn't have to pay the extra penny. Forget that she wasn't paying taxes. She takes a bunch of the free items from the freezer, and I politely remind her that the limit is 10 per person, to be fair to everyone. More yelling. Whatever, it's hot. Moving on. We get to the end, I hand my list over to the makeshift cashier, and the woman asks for a bag of ice. Me. I'm sorry, ma'am, we don't have ice right now. Tuesday. What do you mean there's no ice? I could feel the spit spraying on my face and see her veins popping out. I was done dealing with this. I called the owner over and let him take over. She continued to scream at him. Owner, ma'am, I'm really sorry we don't have ice. Without electricity, the freezer doesn't work. Tuesday, this is bullcrap. I waited all day, have to pay ridiculous prices, and can't even get what I need. The owner started to get irritated, but then when she finally says she'll just pay for what she has, she throws a credit card at the cashier. I was dumbfounded. Owner, ma'am, we can't take a credit card right now. We have no power. The machines are down. We have large signs posted everywhere. I will accept a check or cash. Tuesday begins screaming at the top of her lungs, calling me names that even the 12-year-old kids playing Xbox Live wouldn't use. I was on the verge of tears. The owner finally lost it. He returned her insults with some very nasty ones of his own. The town sheriff, who'd been patiently waiting his own turn to grocery shop, heard the commotion and stepped in. The woman was escorted out and told she could never return. I've never felt so satisfied. I spent the next month working 60-hour weeks until schools opened up and our house got electricity back. I ended up with a nice raise and a $500 bonus, which was a lot of money for a 17-year-old. And our last story. Entitled mom thinks her child with a sprained ankle is worse than me in and out of consciousness. Today's cast. EM, entitled mother. NK, nice kid. Me, I don't really say anything. Mom, my mom. AN, awesome nurse. DC, doctors. This part's pretty important to the story. So about 2 years ago, September 15th, 2017, my mom and dad had taken me to the hospital because I was extremely sick. Like, I had huge bags under my eyes, I'd lost 20 pounds in 5 days, my joints were poking out, and I had no energy. On the way to the hospital, my parents had to make sure I was staying awake in fear of me passing out. I forgot to mention I was also constantly thirsty and peeing a lot. We get there, and they see I'm in a very bad condition. My parents had to help me walk, so they brought me a wheelchair so they could push me into the ER. They looked at me and asked my parents if it's okay to check my blood sugar. My mom gave the okay, and the DC checked my blood sugar. They came back and told my mom I had ketoacidosis, which is a diabetes-caused disease. They then told my parents that my blood sugar was 498. That's bad. And that I had type 1 diabetes. This broke my parents' heart. My mom started crying, but they were more heartbroken because I had to check my blood and give myself shots. Enter the EM. This awesome nurse was the best woman I have ever met. She was making sure I was comfortable while other nurses set up a room for me in the ICU, talking to me, asking how school was going, etc. So EM was on the other side of the room, which was separated by a curtain. She'd come in before me. A lot of doctors were making sure how bad my condition was, checking if the room was almost done, etc. Then the EM makes a mistake. EM: "Excuse me, you need to tend to my son. We were here first." Doctor: "We're aware of that, ma'am, but this patient is going in and out of consciousness." EM: "I don't care. My son is more important." Doctor: "Ma'am, this child is on a life or death situation, and your child only has a hurt ankle." This stupid woman said this. EM: "I don't care if that child is dying. Tend to my son now." AN: "Ma'am, I'm going to say this once and only once. Shut the F up. This child is on the verge of dying, her parents are in absolute disrepair, and you have the nerve to say your child needs to be helped first because of a hurt ankle?" EM: "How dare you?" AN: "If you bother us one more time, I can and will call the police on you for harassment against the patient and the hospital staff." The EM finally shut her trap and left us alone. Bless that nurse, man. I got put into ICU, got taken out after a day and a half, got put into the children's section, I was 11, and was there for 6 days until I finally went back home. It's been a good 2 years since I was diagnosed, and I'm lucky that I didn't die from ketoacidosis and dying from not having enough insulin. Some diabetics die from rationing out their insulin because they can't afford it. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.